Mayor's meeting, which I think we're holding biannually or quarterly if needed. And it's April 3rd, 2024. The time is 10:06 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Commissioner Brooks is joining us via telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. I will mention, though, that this meeting was posted in less than 24 hours as required, and we went ahead with the meeting anyway. That's okay. That's all right. We went ahead with the meeting because to reschedule all of the mayors would have been not easy to do. So,
Chair Duncan.
Yes.
The other thing, the only business we have are discussion items, so
Yes.
that's not necessarily fatal to this meeting.
and thank you, Pat, for pointing that out. Yes, and it is not an action item meeting. It is merely a discussion to maintain relationship with our partners and stakeholders in the county. So with that, I'll call for public comments. Okay, hearing none, I'll go to our first item, which is impact fee discussion. And Commissioner Matari, did you want to lead us in that?
Yes. First of all, thank you all for showing up. We really appreciate it. This is one community. We're all in it together. And we've been working with a firm a while ago trying to get an impact fee implemented. Many of you are aware of what we've been trying to do. One of the issues that was brought forth, Emily, I'm going to pick on you a little bit, but I agree wholeheartedly with your concerns about the methodology that was used to calculate the jail bed fee. And so we have been looking at it and kind of came up with a plan that we would like to proceed with that I think would make sense. As you know, getting the first of anything implemented is the hardest. In the publishing world, the first issue that comes off the printing press is the hardest, and each one after that is pretty easy. And it would be the same thing here. Getting the impact fee implemented and collected is going to be the biggest challenge for the first one. But after that, the processes should be in place so that we can plan on collecting it on a regular basis. So with that said, what we have done is we have scheduled a public hearing for the end of April to use the existing methodology, with the understanding that it will need to change. And it probably needs to be updated anyhow because the calculation was done 2 years ago and a lot has changed, especially on the expenses. I'd like to think that the cities conceptually agree with the fact that there should be a jail bed impact fee because the jail is used by everyone in the county. I know that we had some other discussions with respect to a Parks and Rec fee, as well as there was an additional fee with some radios at the jail that we could show lasted longer than 10 years, but they really, it was questionable about how much one could argue that they were a long-term, investment, if you will. So we basically are down to a jail bed impact fee, and the fee amount is $551 that's been calculated. And so what we would like to do is have our public hearing at the end of this month, put together a resolution that the cities can agree to for collecting the fee, begin collecting that fee, and then work with a consulting firm to develop a new methodology and an updated fee that we would once again hold another public hearing, which would probably occur sometime in the next 12 months, at least 6, but upwards of 12. And then and just basically pass that new fee amount along to the cities based upon this new methodology. And so that would be the plan moving forward with the existing impact fee that we're looking to collect, how we left it at our last meeting. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Yes.
So with an impact fee within the county, in your adoption of an ordinance for that impact fee, a simple resolution doesn't allow us within the city to adopt or collect impact fees on behalf of the county. The city has to adopt an ordinance of our own And an agreement between the counties and the city has to be done as well. It's exactly what we did with the fire districts and EMS.
Yes, and I think it is, just from our perspective, that's one of the steps that we need to complete. But yes, you're absolutely correct in that. And we would need a intergovernmental agreement. So, thank you.
We'll
Yes.
have to amend our ordinance too, so,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes, Mayor Hammond.
Has there been anything done relative to some, am I supposed to push that? Sorry. Has there been anything done relative to legislation that would more smooth the pathway for counties and cities to work on impact fees?
I'm not aware of anything at this point. And I have to tell you, I did the numbers with this impact fee calculation. Our consulting firm came up with $551 per unit, and I believe 25 cents a square foot of impact fee. And in order for us to actually implement a jail expansion, it's 24 cents, excuse me. In order for us to generate enough money for the next jail expansion, which I estimate at $15 million, which is probably going to be low, we would need to add 18,000 more homes and 21 million square feet of commercial space in this county, assuming a 2/3 blend of residential and 1/3 commercial. We would need to add 18,000 more homes, 21 million square feet, which is the equivalent of 115 supercenter Walmarts, in order to generate impact fees equaling $15 million. And that would have to be within 8 years, because that's the way the statute is written, that if we don't utilize that money within 8 years, then it goes back. So it's, from my perspective, I think there's a lot of improvement that could be had with our impact fee statute. I don't think it serves the community very well, because the amounts and the time limits that are put on all of us to spend this money is just not reasonable for a long-term asset. It must last more than 10 years, but you only have 8 years to build up the money. And it just doesn't seem reasonable. So I haven't met anyone in the community that wants to see 18,000 more homes and 110 more supercenter Walmarts built in the next 8 years. But that's what would have to happen in order to get that. However, with that said, some money is better than no money. And we can find money from other places and incorporate that money with any impact fee money that we might have to help pay for some of this infrastructure. And those 18,000 homes and additional commercial square feet does not include, the necessity for more schools, for wider roads, and other infrastructure projects in this community. But that's the way the math works with respect to what we were given for the jail bed fee. So that's one of the issues with the legislators. I've talked with them. If anything, I have advocated for them to amend the statute with one character, add a 1, better yet, a 2 in front of the 8. So we would have 18 or 28 years to accumulate the money to pay for this infrastructure. But I don't see that as being a priority at this point down in Boise. But I won't stop working on it.
I would also add that as we look at other funds, because it's a hard sell, jails are a hard sell. Who wants to build jails? You build a new school, you bet, but a jail, no way. If we can create a substantial fund through impact fees, then it can be matching to a bond, and that certainly becomes more saleable. At least I've seen that done over the years, not necessarily for jail, but for other projects, public projects. So.
Yeah, and I agree, because anything that can lessen the overall cost, I think, is a benefit to the community and the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So that's my hope, is that we can get this started. And once we get it started, it'll be an iterative process to continually improve it. I think the points that Emily brought up are extremely valid, and we don't want to not do anything quickly. So that we're going to initiate the contact with the, my hope is that the board will initiate contact with the consulting firm. Ann Westcott has retired, so we might be kind of starting a little bit from scratch. But I think that the model that you pointed to with Payette County is a great model. And so hopefully that will mitigate the ramp-up time that they would need to model a methodology for us.
Yeah, Payette's report was done by Tischler Bice also, so.
And that's the consulting firm that I believe Ann Westcott's firm merged
Yes.
with that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And she was our consultant, Mayor Hammond.
Well, through the, if I may, Madam Chair, through the Association of Counties, are they, has that been an issue at all around the state for them?
The impact fees?
Yeah.
You know, surprisingly, it hasn't. I've spoken with Seth. I don't know if you've spoken with him at all about this.
There's always bigger priorities than this. So unless we get one or two more counties on board with us, then it's just going to be a hard push.
Thank you.
Are there any questions related?
I had a quick question. What's your timeline on this that you would hope to see as far as adoption goes?
Well, we have the public hearing this month. You know, assuming that the board wants to move relatively quickly, I think we could probably have something, by June or July, even earlier.
The board hearing is actually on May 9th. Planning Commission hearing will be at the end
Okay.
of this month.
All right, so then after May 9th, then we would have to get the information to the city so we could start the
Well,
intergovernmental
after
agreement.
May 9th or whenever thereafter that you adopt those impact fees.
Okay, so we would expect to see drafts of ordinance and agreement and whatnot later in May or June or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I would try to make it as soon as possible after their decision is made.
Okay.
Is your mic on? Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm a little late to the game, so I'm learning a little bit more about the work that's been done leading up to today. But given the fact that the cities are the ones who have to pass the ordinances, meaning councils have to pass them, what if a city doesn't do that? Has that been discussed? And what, just my slight ignorance here is, what does the public hearing that the county is going to do cause for a ripple effect on the cities? So I understand to a certain degree how to assist my council and mayor in that process.
I'll probably ask council to weigh in, but my understanding is if even one city does not sign an intergovernmental agreement and collect fees for us, the county doesn't get to go forward because it creates an inequity situation. But I don't know, Pat, do you have?
Well, that's not completely true. We went forward with the fire and EMS impact fees without Athol being on board. All the other cities were, but and then Athol came on board later. So it's best to have the cities, also collect, or at the very least, the four cities that are represented here. But if collection were limited to the unincorporated county, we would just have to make up the funds to complete the purchases under the capital improvements plan from other sources of revenue. And yeah, it would be, arguably the unincorporated county residents, they would be paying their fair share, but then the county would be paying the fair share of the cities too. So there is that inequity there that we definitely need to take seriously.
Is the model, will there be a model ordinance drafted, or is each city left to create
I
that?
think each of you have your own impact fee ordinances as it is.
So with the fire and EMS district, we were given a draft ordinance to review and adopt, and that's what I would expect to see from the county.
Right.
It'd be a
Right.
draft ordinance to
I
adopt.
would too, I just am asking
And it
that
can be either a
question.
standalone ordinance or an ordinance amending your existing code, whichever way you guys decide to go. In our case, it would be amendments to our existing county code that we will be doing.
Yeah, and the other hope too is the fact that there is an incentive for the cities to strongly consider this, because it is one way that growth can help pay for itself, and we don't shift that burden onto the backs of the existing citizens. Because the fact is that as this community grows, at some point we will need to expand the jail again, and that has to be paid for. So it's just a matter of, do we want to shift that cost onto the newer residents, or do we want to keep it on existing residents? And that statute is basically a mechanism to allow for the growth to help pay for itself.
Couple quick questions. One is, I'm a little bit concerned about the concept of adopting a fee based on what I think everyone agrees is a bit of a flawed methodology. I'm not sure that we would love the idea of adopting a fee when there's a question about the methodology. So I think, to me, that's a bit of a concern. I'd need to see, I suppose, what the final resolution looks like and what you send to us, but that would be something that we would want to talk over, obviously, with our mayor and council. And then still hanging out there is, I think, our position has been that we'd be willing to move forward, and we're supportive of moving forward, but that the issues with late charges and penalties needs to be resolved before the city of Post Falls would be willing to move forward in that. And as it stands right now, we're probably a year or more away from having some resolution on that. So I'm not sure how best to move that forward without, frankly, the county reconsidering their position on penalties and late charges.
Yeah, well, that's something that we've talked about from the very beginning. It has not been forgotten. I believe that the Supreme Court will be looking at that this summer. So if it takes a year, then we might just have to wait until that's resolved, and I understand that. But with that said, it would still be, I think, appropriate and productive to at least start to get to the point where we don't have as much legwork to do.
I guess maybe as a follow-up, if we're assuming that we're not going to get to this until after the Supreme Court issues a decision, why would we wait to fix the methodology and adopt one now when we've got the time to work on correcting a methodology over that period of time?
Well, I guess the question is just, once the systems are set up to start collecting the impact fee, I believe updating the methodology and updating whatever has to be done on the city side would be less of an issue, I would assume.
Process for us to adopt one CIP versus another.
Yeah, I mean, because we're gonna, as time goes by, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, I'm not even sure if today $551 is even a reasonable number. But if you think it's the same process, then maybe that might be the way to go. We just, if you're resistant to it, then the answer will be, let's go back to the consulting firm and update it.
Well, and if I may, our city council and mayor has talked about it, even under our new elected officials, have brought up the late charges and interest conversation, within the last 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're still pretty adamant that that's the only, they're agreeable to doing a jail impact fee. But right now, at this point, the only thing that they have as any leverage of solving the interest and penalty stuff is to hold off on this. Because for our city, even at $551, last year we had over 200 residential permits, and that adds a couple zeros behind that. That's far more than what the late charges and interests are, and so they felt like the leverage of solving that problem, the county gains for the jail a heck of a lot more than the city of Rathdrum's late charges and interest.
Yeah. Well, clearly the cities have spoken here. So, I recognize that. It was an issue from the very first meeting that we got together. All I was really trying to do was just, get things moving forward, but it still doesn't stop us from being able to do that. We'll just use the time with the consulting firm to update the methodology. And I'd like to get to the point where we can go as far as we can until this issue is resolved, and at least start collecting something.
Well, commissioners, I totally fine with moving forward and getting everything that we need, including the methodology, as Warren has stated, updated. And it would be good to have that so that when the resolution is completed on the penalties and interest, it's one meeting away pretty much of adopting the impact fees.
Okay. It's been an issue from the beginning, so it's not a problem. Any other questions or?
I just have a quick comment. I do appreciate that you guys are willing to work with the consulting firm to redo the methodology. As you know, we've been a bit concerned from the beginning with it, so knowing that you guys have heard our concerns and are working to fix that, it is appreciated, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you for bringing it up, because you really got into some very good detail and explanations, and so I understand where you were coming from as well, looking at it. Any other questions or comments on the impact fee?
Can you hit your microphone? Is that-
Where are we standing right now in terms of jail capacity? I know that's an issue, but I'm not quite clear on how much of an issue it is.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we will talk about that on the next item,
Oh, okay.
and you'll get to see that.
I'll hold on to it.
Any other thoughts, comments, concerns?
Bill, anything to add?
I really don't. It's been a good discussion so far.
All right, then we'll head on to item 2 with it, which is the growth dashboard. Again, Commissioner Matari.
And if I could, I want to stand up on this. This is something that I've been working on with staff for many months now. As many of you know, I own a business, and one of the things about running a business is that you have to have good feedback loops. You have to understand what's happening within your organization so you can figure out if it's being underutilized, overutilized, or it's being utilized correctly. Now, what you're seeing here is a time-lapse map of the city's growth since 2002. So I thought you might find that interesting. This is public on the county's website, and it just gives people a sense as to how much this community is growing out on the prairie. Jonathan, you want to move up to the dashboard? So what we did here is we created what I call a growth dashboard, and it's similar in concept to a dashboard on your car, right? You have feedback loops. Your speedometer tells you how fast you're going, and that tells you whether you need to hit the brake or the accelerator. And so what we did here is we worked with a number of different departments and elected officials to look at what is happening within those departments and compare the county's organizational metrics with industry and professional standards. And then we assign a color to them, similar to like on a dashboard. Green is good, yellow is an indicator that a particular department may be getting stressed, and then red, of course, will tell you how stressed the department is. Jonathan, can you go to the jail, please? Mayor Hammond, you asked about that. So right here, we have it in the red, and that's largely because we have a physical capacity in the jail of 451 inmates. But the actual legal capacity is, at 361, and that is based upon staffing right now. And then what you'll see is that right now, as of in March, we hit 488 inmates. And we've been as high as 550 inmates at a time. We've had some issues where we've had inmates actually sleeping on the floor. When you start to have that kind of crowding, the chances of somebody getting injured goes up. And so this is a feedback loop for the jail. And if you could go ahead and click on the link, Jonathan, and that takes you to some additional stats for the jail. And here is a trend line that shows you the average number of inmates that are inside the jail by year. And as you can see, they're going up. And of course, we believe, although the methodology has not been established, that the growth in our community is leading to the higher inmate populations in our
question?
jail. Yes.
Are you able to overlay that trend line with the trend line for growth to see if per capita the number of inmates is following growth, exceeding growth, or slower than growth?
That's an excellent question, and this is the first iteration. Like I said, getting the first version out is typically the most difficult, and you'll see it get improved as time goes by, but we could do something like that.
I know it doesn't solve the inmates per beds, et cetera, you still have the same problem. I'm just more curious what the true impact of growth is relative to our jail.
Yes. Good point. Go down a little further, Jonathan, if you could. And then inmates per deputy versus the industry standard. And right now, the industry standard is about, 5 deputies per, how many inmates do we have? 1 deputy per 5 inmates. That's the industry standard. And we are trending upwards of 1 deputy for upwards of 7 inmates. Again, this is just a feedback loop so that we can understand what's going on with the county departments and different elected officials. You want to go back to the dashboard?
One more question. Does our jail have any kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, inter-jail agreement with other law enforcement facilities or other jails where if we have too many and they don't have enough, that
Yes.
I assume for money we can port prisoners over?
We do, and we pay for that too, as well as the health care over at those jails.
How's that working out?
Well, it's a little more expensive, yeah. And, one of the issues too with the jail is that Idaho Department of Corrections, they sometimes, the bus comes around to pick up the inmates, sometimes infrequently. And so we'll have inmates that have been sentenced to prison, but they're waiting in jail to be picked up and processed into prison. And so we hold on to those. And that ranges between 75 and 110, 120 inmates at a time. And it's significant. So, yes.
Question on that. After they had, and this is just, I don't know the answer, but after they have been sentenced and they're supposed to be in the prison system, does the state reimburse the county for expenses of those individuals?
It does.
Okay, good, because I was just worried that, that falls on the county taxpayers to pay for those expenses for those that have been sentenced that should be in the state system already.
It's not 100% though.
Oh, it's not?
Yeah, it doesn't cover the cost. It's a partial reimbursement. Why don't we go to the prosecutor's office? Stanley Mortensen provided this information. And again, a feedback loop for what's going on. It's based upon the number of cases, annual cases per prosecutor. And so there's 2 different categories, misdemeanor and felony. And so right now the felony caseload is 197. The industry standard is 150 annually. And on misdemeanor, what do we have? 644 cases, and 400 is the standard on misdemeanor. Now, what's interesting, and this business is new to me, but it's always fascinating when I talk with the different elected officials and the department heads who know about their business. When we have a prosecutor that's so overwhelmed with misdemeanor cases, what happens is you start to have to make decisions on whether or not you want to prosecute the misdemeanor case. Because you would assume that a felony case would be much more important to prosecute. But when you don't prosecute misdemeanor cases, what you end up with a lot of times is that it becomes a consequenceless crime. And most of the people that end up staying in the Kootenai County Bed and Breakfast, also known as the jail, they don't start off committing felonies. They start off with misdemeanors. And so if we don't prosecute the misdemeanors, it's easier for those crimes to become felonies, or at least the criminals to move in that direction. And so that's a challenge for our prosecutor's office. So having this feedback is good. If you want to go ahead and click on the link, thank you. This shows where we are caseload right now, 197 per year versus the industry standard of 150. Then misdemeanor. Some charts there. And then did you have some citations as well? So Jonathan helped put a lot of this together, and he did a fantastic job. And there's a lot of citations and links to outside sources, so you can see where the numbers kind of were compiled from. And then let's go back to the dashboard and do look at juvenile detention.
Bruce, question about prosecutors.
Yes.
Is this a can't hire the talent issue? Is this a is not budgeted for issue? I mean, what's the county doing? If you're in the red for a number of prosecutors versus cases, what are you guys doing to solve it?
Well, it's a combination of things, but one of the things that the board has done is we have reevaluated the pay. So a lot of things happen very quickly. The growth, the cost of hiring employees. I'm sure each of you has seen what it costs now to hire a qualified person. It's gone up a lot over a very short period of time. And so what we've done is we've increased the pay, and the prosecutor's office is starting to hire more people. And so we'll start to see these numbers. They're going to get updated monthly or quarterly, depending on the department head and the office. So this just came out a little over a month ago, or about a month ago, and so this is the snapshot of where we are today. And we have every intention of addressing these things and getting the right people in there. And it's all market driven.
Commissioner, could I just add real quick?
Yes.
There's also, some departments are annual. The prosecutor's office is an annual update.
Okay.
Just
So there you go, the numbers for the prosecutor's office. But he has brought that to the board's attention, and we addressed that back in December, I think. December or January. Yeah, and
The short answer is talent acquisition.
yes, yes. Okay, juvenile detention. This one is in the green. Now, like all information that we look at, you have to scratch a little bit deeper to figure out what's going on. But let's look at what we have here. Right now, it's good. There's 17 residents on average inside our juvenile detention facility. The maximum amount that we have right now is 31, and the reason for that, Jonathan?
It's based on the standards set by the state for ratio for staff. We actually have a max beds of 55, but 31 will be the max that we can have based on staffing.
And that's because we don't need as much staffing because we're not at the physical capacity. So it looks like good news. However, this past week, we had a juvenile justice report provided to the board, and a lot of the crime, believe it or not, had actually increased. We had seen 20 to 25% increase in misdemeanor crimes, and actually a decrease in felony, which was a little bit surprising. And after a little bit of inquiry, it turns out that a lot of the felony charges are actually getting reduced. And so that's what's actually kind of making the numbers look the way they are. However, there's also another component to this that's helping, and that is juvenile diversion. And so that has been working out really well. And the reality is that we don't want to incarcerate juveniles in any way, shape, or form if we can help it. And we'd like to keep them out of the criminal justice system because we don't want them to be, kind of hamstrung with that, even though we know that as they become an adult, those records are sealed. But it still is not as productive if we can avoid it. So you look at these numbers here and they look pretty good, but there's a little bit more to it behind the story. But again, it's another indicator for county management to understand what's going on within the organization and where attention needs to be given. My hope is that the cities will look at this and say, you know, this may not be a bad idea for our own cities and our services. But the one thing that I do really hope that you consider is that when you make your growth decisions, you at least take a look at our dashboard and just kind of see where we are, because we're all in this together, and so we have to provide a lot of these services. They're state mandated for the entire county. And by now having this feedback loop, management here within the county can start to address these issues. The public can see what's going on, and hopefully the cities can incorporate this information in their decision-making process. That is the hope. Anyone have any questions? No? You guys are pretty easy today. Thank you. Another area too where this dashboard will help is that we're working on developing or updating our comp plan. And one of the ideas that I would like to present to you for consideration is that perhaps we can look at having comp plans that are linked among the various different jurisdictions so we can have some continuity within the community. And if I could, I'd like to have David Callahan speak a little bit about that, because he has a lot of experience from a couple major metropolitan areas that have grown rapidly over the last 20, 30 years. David?
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. The thing that comes to mind to me, I just noticed that recently Ada County was updating its comprehensive plan last year, and they reached out and connected with each of their cities and incorporated concerns from their cities in the county comp plan. That seems entirely logical to me for reasons you can well surmise. But among the things that it did and I'll plan on following up with Ada County and see where they ultimately landed. But among the things that it could help us with locally is that at the moment, our comp plan doesn't even consider what your respective comp plans say. And to my knowledge, your plans don't consider what our plan says. And so that sort of inconsistency is unhelpful at best. It can be actually harmful if we're working at odds against each other. And so my hope in this next update is that we'll ask our consultant to reach out to each of your planning divisions and just see, is there anything that we're currently missing that you would like us to have? And I hope that it could be a reciprocal kind of thing. If I may, can I go on for another minute or two? I'm reminded of a time I worked in the Denver area, regional area. I worked for one of the suburbs and for the county, Boulder County. And Denver has what's called the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is kind of a step up from our local COG, because there it didn't just deal with transportation, it also dealt with land use planning and aging. And interestingly, it had multiple layers. There was a layer of city council and mayors. There was a layer of city managers and staff. And there was even my level of management level. And we would all meet once a month. Not all of us all together. The mayors would meet, the council, and so on and so forth. But among the things that did is it allowed all of the cities and counties to communicate early on about concerns. And so if there were going to be impact fees, for instance, that was broached at the Denver regional level first before anything was ever actually done. And so I'm just throwing that out there as food for thought of something we might contemplate for the future. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
No question, but I think that that'd be a great idea. The more that we communicate between our different entities, the better, and the better it is for the county as a whole to know and work together on different projects.
Yeah, and I would encourage that if you looked at from the planning level and not necessarily at our level, and let the folks that kind of know what they're talking about discuss these issues. But this is one of the hopes, one of the goals that I had with us starting to meet at least once every 6 months, is that we could start engaging in conversation about these things and at least get the ball moving. Because I don't think it's going to be much longer, if you look at that time-lapse map, that we're going to have a very metropolitan area. And we're going to start having discussions about resources and limited resources and what we can do to work together. And I know in my discussions with Director Callahan that what he has seen in his career was where cities really needed to work together because resources become limited as a community continues to grow and grow and grow. And so I'm hoping that this can be the beginning of that.
Emily, did you have anything?
I don't know if you guys would have the answer to this or not, but what would the county do if there were two cities or several cities that had differing goals in their comp plan? How would the county address that in their comp plan, dealing with differing goals of cities within the county?
Well, at the very least, in my view, those differences need to be acknowledged publicly. And that's among the usefulness of coordinating those kinds of things, is at least it's possible for a resident of the county or any city to turn to our comp plan and see where there are these differences.
Madam Chair, can I add to David's comment?
Is your mic on?
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
The other thing, well, couple just considerations too. I mean, when we're considering development application in an area of city impact, we're supposed to be looking at the city's comp plan anyway, along with the county's comp plan for that area, and determining compatibility with both. And of course, we send requests for comment from the affected city or cities. And you guys have been really good about sending back comments when warranted. I think this would kind of be the next iteration of that. Not only acknowledging differences, but acknowledging that you kind of got urban planning on one side and rural planning on the other, and they should complement each other. While they can have very different goals, policies, and all that. I think the idea is for them to complement each other. So, development primarily goes into cities, which it does anyway. And then, the proper, what we consider to be, desirable growth in the unincorporated county, and particularly what we do with areas of city impact.
Quick comment on that. I think the cities right now do a pretty good job of coordinating. We're always, at least this group, and frankly some of the others as well, we reach out to each other. We talk pretty well constantly. I think we have a pretty good handle on where we're all at. Anything that enhances that, I think, is a good thing. I think that's something that our mayor and council would strongly support. I don't have any issues with that. I think we're very supportive of that. We are just kicking off a comprehensive plan update. Actually, next Thursday, we're starting with a workshop next Thursday to start that process.
We're actually kicking off ours too.
So we're in process, and I think we'll go where our new council and our wants to go, and that's sort of the vision of the community communicated back to the city council ultimately determines what ends up in that plan. One thing that we do have coming up that we're all going to have to wrestle with, you mentioned the areas of city impact. A bill has passed and been signed by the governor that's going to radically change what those ACI boundaries look like. And so over the next year or so, we're all going to be talking and renegotiating and figuring out what those boundaries look like. That may change significantly what growth on the peripheries of the cities look like. We'll see.
Yeah, and particularly with recent annexations, especially Post Falls and Rathdrum both, you do touch each other now, so.
Yeah,
That-
and
that
that's
is-
a little bit misleading because much of that area is reserved for land application of treated effluent, so the boundaries actually look bigger
Oh,
than,
yeah, I was
because
just, yeah, I was just talking the physical
it's in our
city
boundaries, but
limits.
there's significant acreage that is not going to be developed because it's there for land application.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm glad, I'm actually, as a citizen and a resident of Post Falls, I'm glad to hear that. What was I gonna say? But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree, I think some of these ACIs are gonna look a lot different. You know, do we do another coordinated ACI with Post Falls, Rathdrum, and Hayden, or do we have our own ACIs?
I think the statute now forecloses that as an option. They're gonna have to be separate.
Yeah, and I think we're probably headed that direction anyway, so. Not I'm not real concerned about that, but, yeah, I agree. I think we, and, I would throw Coeur d'Alene into this too. I think we need to take a good look at not only the boundaries, but the terms and conditions of the ACI agreements, and, just come up with ones that make sense now and, we think will make sense into the future, so.
Mayor, did you have something to add?
I'm sorry?
Did you have something to add?
No.
All right, and
Yeah, I had a question for David. If we follow the model that you're describing that was done in the Denver area, how can the cities better leverage themselves to solve problems that are bigger than the city? I'll use transportation, for example. We have a KMPO representative, and I've been asking him to be aggressive, understanding where the Hutter bypass is going, for example. The cities are growing. The biggest impact to us isn't necessarily a building going up here or a building going up there. It's all the cars that are on the roads that weren't built for this growth. Yet as cities, I feel helpless to solve that problem. And to me, that's probably the biggest problem if this map becomes one big metropolitan area. And to hear, well, it's on the list of things we might do, and it'll be on that list till 2029, and that's all we can tell you. That answer is completely unacceptable.
Sure. What I witnessed was the biggest single driving factor in the Denver Regional Council of Governments was that the mayors of each city and their councils were directly involved in showing up monthly. And it's hard for, in this case, Dr. Cog to say no to every mayor and council in the community. And so what you started to see was that direct representation by the cities had a direct impact on how Dr. Cog managed monies. Because Dr. Cog does the same thing there as our COG does here. They apportion billions of dollars of federal money, but not just for transportation. It was also for land use and aging. And so all those things together tend to work well.
I'd love to hear from the other cities, not this second, obviously, but maybe over the next 30 or 60 days, if I'm the only one that feels this way about what I stated. Because if I am, obviously, I'll just put my gun away and go home.
all right, anything else? So I think, I would like to see area city impact in this bill on our next agenda for when we meet. And when the invitation goes out, if there's anything that any mayor would like on the agenda to bring up, please let us know, and we can add that for discussion.
When are you anticipating the next meeting? In 6 months?
6 months.
Would it be possible to get a copy of a draft agenda a couple weeks beforehand? Because when the invite goes out, it can be months down the road. We may or may not know what we want to talk about months down the road, but if we could get a draft agenda a couple weeks before, that would be a little more timely for us to say, hey, this is an issue that's come up that we would like to have for discussion.
Yep, we can do that.
what he said.
Okay, excellent. All right, anything else? I will call for public comment. All right, 10:55, meeting adjourned. Thank you guys for coming.